Mr. Speaker, yesterday, CNN reported that the Pentagon is considering a proposal to send U.S. ground troops to northern Syria. This is for a report to President Trump on the war against ISIS due this month. But the very idea that the Pentagon is seriously considering sending more troops into Syria should be a wake-up call to Congress and to all Americans. 3 years after the U.S. first sent troops to Syria and Iraq, Congress still hasn't voted to authorize the fight against ISIS. Do we really want to send more Americans into war? What's the mission? How does it end? For 3 years, Congress has failed to do its constitutional duty. 3 years of cowardice. 3 years of a blank check. Speaker Ryan promised action in 2016, but did nothing. When, Mr. Speaker, will this House finally do its job? After 100 more American troops are sent to Syria and Iraq, 500 more, 1,000? When will Congress finally act? Mr. Speaker, I say the time is now. I yield back my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Arizona seek recognition?
Consent to address the House in 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to commemorate the life of Tim Prendeville, an active member of Tucson's Irish community and a dear friend of my family and mine, who sadly passed away on February 14th. Tim dedicated his life to giving back to others. For example, he organized meals and bought sleeping bags for the homeless at Armory Park. And he donated his time to help those who could not read or write send letters to their loved ones. He was a founding member of Tucson St. Patrick's Day Committee and was honored last year as the Grand Marshal of the annual parade. He was also a gifted storyteller, a reflection of his Irish roots. One of his favorites was a time he sang "Oh Danny Boy" at a dinner with then presidential candidate John F. Kennedy. I've known Tim ever since I was a young child. When I was 12, he delivered the eulogy at my father's funeral. Throughout my life, he's been a constant source of encouragement, and although we belonged to different political parties, he was somebody who shared widely his faith and belief in me. Mr. Speaker, I'm deeply grateful for Tim Prendeville's life and love and support. My thoughts and prayers go out to his family and loved ones in our time of grief. I know he's now singing "Oh Danny Boy" with the angels. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to applaud the United States Postal Services for its dedication of the Oscar de la Renta postage stamp. This stamp was unveiled today at Grand Central Station in New York City in a wonderful ceremony, and it is part of the U.S. Postal Service's Forever collection. As a lifelong friend, I dearly miss Oscar de la Renta and care about honoring his work and his memory. To me and so many Americans, particularly immigrants, he was more than just a designer. He was a good friend and a pioneer. As a member of the Dominican American community and as a member of the U.S. Congress, it is my goal to highlight the achievement of immigrants who have contributed to American society and culture. That Oscar was highly regarded by some of the most prominent figures of our time, including first ladies. He maintained his humility and never cast aside those who were less fortunate. His creativity, resourcefulness, and love of life are admirable characteristics that made him a true national treasure. Oscar was widely known for his love of country and deep affection for the Dominican American community. I am proud to see Oscar's legacy honored and hope to keep his memory alive. Oscar is still with us. Once someone asked him how he wanted to be remembered, he simply said, "As a pretty dress." Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak about the important role that Manufacturing Extension Partnership plays in strengthening U.S. manufacturing. This public-private partnership consists of a nationwide system of centers located throughout the United States. Manufacturers can receive several services by visiting a designated MEP center, including workforce development, supply chain development, commercialization, exporting, and many other helpful strategies. I recently had the opportunity to meet with the Innovative Manufacturers Center in my home district. The IMC works to increase the innovation, productivity, and the growth for manufacturers in central Pennsylvania. Over the past 25 years, IMC has helped more than 600 manufacturing companies in this 12-county region of the Keystone State. Mr. Speaker, American manufacturing is a critical part of our economy. I'm pleased to see the public-private partnerships working to help support small and mid-sized manufacturers. These are the businesses that employ our neighbors and produce quality made-in-America products. I look forward to seeing their continued growth, and I salute the centers nationwide that help them do just that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
I request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my time.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to recognize and congratulate California's new Attorney General, my friend Javier Becerra. As many of you know, former Congressman Becerra was the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Chair from 1997 to 1999. He was our Democratic Caucus Vice Chair from 2009 through 2013, and also our Democratic Caucus Chair for the 114th Congress. We all know that Attorney General Becerra was a staunch defender of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, and other support for people in need. He was also a supporter for our Dreamers and for DACA and for women's rights. He was also a mentor to me, inspiring new members who came here look to him for advice, especially in our first couple of weeks here. And I want to thank Attorney General Becerra for coming to a roundtable in my district over in Polk County to visit with so many of our agricultural workers in our community and so many dreamers. It's so critical for agriculture, for our farmers, and for rural America that we continue to make sure that agriculture goes and continues to be strong in our nation. As a Californian, he also even starred in Stephen Colbert's Better Know Your District. So I just want to thank once again Congressman Javier Becerra for being an American member of Congress, someone who looked out for all of us and defended our values. And with that, I yield the remainder of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to highlight the progress hardworking Western Pennsylvanians have made in restoring our hillsides and streams and historic mining communities polluted by waste coal. Through the use of innovative technology, workers in the coal refuse to energy industry have brought about an incredible transformation of formerly polluted areas, restoring landscapes to their original natural beauty. It is a success story all around, both environmentally and economically. Unfortunately, one-size-fits-all Washington regulations threaten to stop the success story in its tracks and to destroy the family-sustaining jobs the coal refuse to energy industry supports. That is why, for the third time, I am introducing my Satisfying Energy Needs While Saving the Environment, or SENSE Act, in the 115th Congress as H.R. 1119. My legislation ensures that regulations are tailored to allow a very specific and small subset of power plants to continue their remediation efforts and restore Western Pennsylvania's natural beauty, as well as landscapes and historic mining communities across the country. This legislation passed the House with bipartisan support last year by a vote of 231 to 183, and I urge my colleagues to support it once again so that the vital and successful work of providing electricity while cleaning up the environment can continue. I thank the Speaker and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, from the mother of four with a pre-existing condition to the family of a young boy who can now afford health insurance for the first time, we have heard constantly and over how the Affordable Care Act has saved lives. The Affordable Care Act provides quality, affordable insurance to millions of Americans. For example, just in my district alone, nearly 100,000 people who are now covered through our Covered California, our exchange, or through the Medicaid, which is in California, the Medi-Cal expansion, they stand to lose coverage if the Affordable Care Act is repealed. It is completely irresponsible to speak about repealing the Affordable Care Act with no replacement, and I urge my colleagues to think about their own constituents before doing so. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to bring attention to a truly innovative pilot program in my district in Pensacola, Florida. This one-of-a-kind program known as the 30 Million Words Initiative is a collaborative effort brought by researchers from the University of Chicago in partnership with the Studer Community Institute. The 30 Million Words Initiative will educate parents of newborns at Sacred Heart Hospital, Baptist Hospital, and West Florida Hospital on best practices for speech and engagement during the critical learning stage up to 3 years old. As we all know, interaction by speech or music with young children has not only had an impact on learning abilities, but also emotional needs. This program builds on this principle and strives to include all newborns, regardless of income level, race, or ethnicity. Through this simple commitment, we can challenge the socioeconomic stereotypes we have become too used to and build a future for leaders and innovators stemming from all walks of life, bringing new ideas for a vision for the future. This truly unique partnership between our community leaders and the parents of our future generation will garner a secure foundation for our children to bring stronger education, allow limitless possibilities, and meeting the challenges to build a better tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The relationship between the United States and Israel is a very important one and one beneficial to both sides, and also a moral one. I was very glad to see this week the President so early on in his term inviting and making welcome Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to this country and showing that the U.S. relation is important with Israel to us as it is to them. Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state through much of its history of this earth. It has been a very strong one for their assertion, for their rights to be part of the fiber of the Middle East. The United States needs to be on their side and a firm partner in what they need to do. So again, kudos to President Trump for making this establishment of this relationship early on in this term and sending that assurance to Prime Minister Netanyahu, the people of Israel, and the importance to the people of this country of that relationship. I yield back.
Are there any further requests for 1 minute speeches? The chair lays before the House the following personal requests.
Leave of absence requested for Mr. Bishop of Georgia for today and Mr. Curbelo of Florida for today.
Without objection, the requests are granted. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. King, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's my privilege to be recognized to address you here on the floor of the United States House of Representatives, this great deliberative body. And to start this off, I'd be pleased to yield so much time as he may consume to the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Fortenberry.
I thank the gentleman from Iowa for the time. Perhaps this will embarrass you, my colleague Steve King, but as I was flying into Nebraska last week, and I do this on occasion, I'm looking out of the window and looking at the rolling hills of the western edge of Iowa as it borders the Missouri River, and all of that beautiful terracing that has been done on all of that extraordinarily productive farmland in order to save the soil and increase yields. And I wonder how much of that Steve King did himself in a former life. So anyway, I'm grateful for not only the time, but most importantly, your friendship. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and the answer would be a fair amount.
Good. Mr. Speaker, as I was going through my mail last week, I read a publication that I receive frequently at my house from what's called the Great Plains Trails Network. This is a dedicated group of people who enjoy and promote and foster the growing network of hiking and biking trails in my hometown of Lincoln and the vicinity. They provide an extraordinary service to our community. And most notably, the trail systems provides an alternative means of transportation, physically linking our community in creative ways along creek beds and underpasses, through open plains and wooded areas, and besides wooden fences between residential neighborhoods. These trails also link us in a more profound way. They link us to the values of healthy exercise, neighborliness, and the beauty of nature, even in the setting of the urban city environment. Now, Mr. Speaker, I received an unusual media request recently. New York Magazine wished to speak to me. I took the meeting because I wanted to give a broader perspective on the issue of environmental stewardship, particularly in light of policy debates about energy and the environment. Since this topic can be so toxic, I thought it was important to reframe the issues